Hi everyone! Today's topic is all about the behavioral learning theory or behaviorism by Pavlov, Watson, and B.F. Skinner. Behavioral learning theory basically talks about shaping one's behavior and influencing them to do good, to have a positive outcome, to improve their behavior. There are two ways to modify behavior. The first one is the reinforcement or the reward. The reinforcement or the reward is all about giving recognition to one's efforts and achievements. Example for this is when the teacher gives his students a gold star because he answered the question correctly. This practice will lead to a motivation that will also lead to a positive behavior outcome for the student. The second way to modify behavior is punishment. When you say punishment, it is all about eliminating unwanted act or behavior. Example for this is spanking a child because he throws a tantrums. This will lead to a negative behavior of the child because he will think that his feelings was being invalidated. Just remember that reward will lead to motivation and punishment will lead to dissatisfaction. Overall, the behavioral learning theory focuses on improving one's behavior. The behaviorist believes that behaviors are acquired through learning, through conditional process, and through experience. Following are the conditional process that are presented in order to improve one's behavior. Thank you.
Miss Novi. Good afternoon or good evening, everyone. So I'm going to discuss to you about the Pavlovian theory. So what is Pavlovian theory, anyways? So Pavlovian theory, also known as classical conditioning, is a psychological concept developed by Russian psychologist Ivan Pavlov. This theory explains how behaviors can be learned through association between a neutral stimulus and a response that occurs naturally. So when we say classical conditioning, this focuses on how behaviors can be learned through the association between neutral stimulus and response that occurs naturally. So there are three types of stimulus and response. So the first one is neutral, and conditioned, and conditioned. So when we say neutral, it means no reaction, and conditioned, no need to train. While the conditioned is there's a train. So at first you don't know what is stimulus, right, and response. So let me explain you about that. When we say stimulus and response, it means someone's like gikusi ka or pinch you. What's your response? Diba masakitan ka, makaagay, like that. And yeah, so I have a example of Pavlovian theory. So it's about the dog. So this is the dog experiment of Pavlov. Before conditioning, during conditioning, and after conditioning. Okay, let's go first to unconditioned. So when we see unconditioned again, it is about no need to train. Okay, unconditioned stimulus is the food, while the unconditioned response is that the dog salivate. When we say unconditioned, there's no need to train because kusang maglaway na jud ang iro when they see a food like dog foods manang natural nga, like natural na nato nga maglaway ta because there's a food. Yeah, it's just like same sa mangga, makita tag mangga magsalivate atong baba, right? Okay, so neutral stimulus. So here the stimulus is the bell, while the response is no response, rather no reaction. The dog had no reaction. Bisag magbell pa kadira na wala siya reaction because dili na siya food. Okay, during condition. So experiment na nila nga the two combined, they combine the both. So the food plus bell. So at first the focus of the dog here is the food, mo na nagsalivate siya, but after days, weeks of train, the dog response is conditioned stimulus na. Diba kadugayan nato, kadugayan nga to nga masigig train ang kanang amo nato, like masud sa N60, every time na I bell, magbell akong amo, so na I food. So after the conditioning, na condition na siya, nagbell ang amo without the food, nag response na siya. It means condition, there's a train na because naanad na ang iro nga if mag-bill na ang iyahang amo, there's a food na. That is why nagsalivate na siya even though wala ang food. Yeah, that's all about the classical conditioning of Pavlov theory.
So now let's move on to the principles. So first is the stimulus generalizing. So it means generalizing all. So for example, ani is kining nanguyab ka and then nachitan ka and then mo anak din ka na tanang lalaki is cheater, tanang girls is boy ayo. So muna siya ang stimulus generalizing. And then next is the extension. So it means unlearning or removing action. So for example, ani is kining ganhag ka mag-practice of guitar. Tusi ka practice guitar and then pag taod-taod na is kining kapuya na ka, gitapula na ka, and then sahay kining magreklamo ka kay sakit siya sa tubo. So mao na dili na ka mag-cut-on. So wala siya consistency. And the next is spontaneous recovery. So mao ni siya ang opposite. It means relearning. So for example, ani is kining nag-stop mag-smoke. But then, abot ka sa lugar, well, daga na people na nag-smoke. So, buto ikaw, natintal ka, nasuya ka, so mag-smoke mo na sa kaimuhan. So, it means relearning. The next is discrimination. Mana na siya ang opposite sa stimulus generalization. So, it means na dili tanan the same. It means na dili tanan lalaki is cheater, dili tanan girls is ayo, for example, na inana. The next is higher order conditioning. So, it means changing stimulus. So, ang example is sa iro. So, di ba ang iro is kining if mo whistle or mo bell is it means kining mukhaon na inana. But somehow pwede siya ma-change. Example, i-training mo siya sa drum. So, dapat ining drum kay mukhaon na siya. Kanang inana gani. So, muna siya ang changing stimulus. The next is adhesive principle. So, it means attached stimulus. So, ang example ani is, di ba, we all have a favorite songs. And every time that specific song is mo play, it's either ang malipayon ta, or magmaoy ta, or makinumdum ta sa ka person, or nana. So that is adhesive principle. And the last one is principle of exhortation. So diri is, there's action even if there's no stimulus. So diri na mo ang example na inyong mga friends is unahon ang katawa before ang iyang chika. That's all.
Ni hao everyone, I am Trisha Music Harrigan again, and now I will be discussing about Pavlov's conditioning in a nutshell. So this theory of Pavlov conditioning in a nutshell involves a set of multi-layered procedures. So initially the food is called the unconditioned stimulus. The food is an unconditioned stimulus because it leads to an unconditioned response without any learning taking. So this theory of Pavlov discusses we can make a new reaction of a one thing but in a one topic. So for example, the food is called unconditioned stimulus because it leads to an unconditioned response without any learning taking place. So for example, a dog. So I don't have a dog here, but you can imagine it in your mind. So I have a dog. For example, ang dog is, di ba, if ang dog makita sila og food, kay ilahang reaction is dali ra sila gutomon and also na-excite sila if makita sila food. So, ang theory ni Pavlov is, example niya ang dog o ang ilahang food. So, if ang dog nakita sila sa food is more sila ma-excite and also gutomon sila. So, si theory, nangita siya og lain nga pamaagi unsaon niya pagtawag ang usa ka iro pinaagi nga mao na ang time or mao na ang kanang time nga kanang mukaon sila sa food. So ang bell, so I don't have a bell also here, so you can imagine. So ang bell gikuan ni Pavlov ang usa ka bell, iyahang gipatayog ang bell and iyahang gitawag ang iro pinagi sa bell. But ang dog is wala niya gipansin ang usa ka bell because ang nasa hunahuna is ang food. And also si Pavlov iyahang gidungan ang food sa iro og ang bell. And also dito nakita na sa dog nga okay ang bell di ay is mo na ang gamit para kanang mo na ang time nga tawgo na siya siyang amo nga mukaon sa iyang food. So that's the example of Pavlov theory. So kung ato na siyang i-relate sa classroom, if ang mga bata sulod sa classroom, if ang mga bata magkiat and wala nila gihuman ang ilahang homework or ilahang mga activities sulod sa classroom, if ang usa ka bata mukiat, so mukiatanan. And ang teacher, if mubarog na siya and na siya usa ka butang nga kanang bitbiton, let's say for example stick, so mukha siya og stick. So if ang mga bata makita sa stick, meaning pasabot is they need to behave para dili sila mabulanan sa stick.
So hello everyone, here are the other phenomena in classical conditioning. The first one is extension. The conditioned response fades away when the conditioned stimulus is repeatedly presented without the unconditioned stimulus. So let's just say, for example, I know nga, kung imagine kung ang teacher gipatingog ang bell, then right after gipatingog ang bell is na-ay quizzes nga kasunod, which ang students makasabot sila nga kung every time di ay patingog ang bell, na-ay quizzes nga kasunod. But when the teacher decided to stop giving quizzes right after sa previous one, but the bell keeps ringing, of course the students can still feel maka-feel gihapon sila og kakulba o anxiety. Kay tungod pagtuon nila nga kung naaday bell nga motingog is naay quiz nga kasunod. Pero kung maanda na nila nga kung every time ang bell motingog nga wala na quizzes nga kasunod, makasabot na sila nga not all the time di ay nga kung ang bell motingog is naay quizzes nga kasunod. So that's the example of extension. Now let's proceed to the spontaneous recovery. The conditioned response reappears after a period of rest, even if no further pairing of the stimulus has occurred. So let's just say, for example, kung imagine a student who used to be terrified of giving presentation in class, then they would get sweaty palms, mangulba sila, ilahang tingog kay nagkurog-kurog na, and then dili sila confident. Then right after mahuman ang ilahang report is kanang nabaron sila long vacation or kanang long break or long weekend. Then right after sa long weekend is mobalik na sila. Then right after ana is maka-feel sila nga dili na sila balisa, dili na sila maka-feel og nervous, unlike the previous one nga nagbuhat sila presentation. Confident na sila musulod sa eskwelahan kay tungod kabalo na sila nga wala na ang ilahang anxiety. But when the teacher decided, or kung ang teacher yatagan sila balik og presentation or report, the fear might come back. So mauna siya ang example sa spontaneous recovery. It means na tuloy-tuloy ang imuhang pag-recover sa imuhang trauma tungod sa presentation na naagian mo. So that's it. And now let's have these stimulus generalization. The conditioned response is elicited by stimuli similar to the original conditioned stimulus. So when the teacher decided to ring the bell, it means na they have to show courtesy and respect. Kay nakadungog naman sila ana, it means na mo respeto sila and at the same time to say good morning or good afternoon. But when the teacher got sick and there is a substitute teacher, dayon giparing ang bell, different bell, just like sa lahi nga bell, pero pariho og tingog. They might obey. Kay tungod pariho man og tingog pero lahi og bell, makasunod gyapon sila og unsay put pasapot sa gibuhat sa substitute teacher. So that's it for the stimulus generalization. And now let's have these stimulus discrimination. The organism learns to differentiate between the conditioned stimulus and similar stimuli, responding only to the specific conditioned stimulus. So kani siya is basic lang kay ni siya no nga. Let's just say for example, theory man ni siya about ni Pavlov but ni digress lang ta ato siya gi-relate sa ato ang pang-adlaw-adlaw nga kinabuhi, just like inside the classroom. So this one is very basic. Na kung ang teacher is ring ang bell, it means na just like sa stimulus generalization, it means na they have to follow. But when there is other bell which is different from the original one, they can differentiate which is the original. Original aning naa diri sa right, and dili original ang naa sa left. Pa-differentiate nila kung unsa ang kalahian sa duha. Okay?
And now, let's move forward to Watsonian conditioning. According to Watson, if Pavlov is successful in proving associating between stimulus and response, people can also have such ability to associating certain feelings, behaviors, instances, and even symbols. He theorized that learning and unlearning can happen. He also pointed that humans are born with such response such as love, fear, and hate. Watsonian conditioning refers specifically to the approach to learning developed by John B. Watson. It emphasized the importance of observable behavior and environment's role in shaping them. So Watson focused on observable behavior and environment, while Pavlov focused on learning through association of stimuli. Watsonian's works, theoretical and experimental, are focused on behavior. Number 1 is psychological as the behaviorist views in 1930, behaviorism in 1924, psychological care of infant and child 1928, and his famous work is Little Albert's experiment in 1922. So let's talk about Little Albert's experiment. Watson exposed the child to a series of stimuli, including a white rat, rabbit, a monkey, mask, and a newspaper, burning newspaper, and Santa Claus, to observe the boy's reaction. So there are 3 stages of Little Albert's experimental. So his subject is a 9-year. There are 3 stages of Little Albert's experimental. First is before conditioning. The Little Albert showed no end. Stage 2, during conditioning. A stimulus which produces a no response is associated with the unconditioned stimulus, at which point it now becomes known as the conditioned stimulus. So this is what happens when naay loud noise. Mahadlok siya sa rat. Stage 3, after conditioning. So, after pairing sa loud noise o sa rat, sa stage 3 na kay bisan pag walay loud noise, kay mahadlok na si Little Albert sa mga balibuon nga mga object. So that's the stages of Little Albert's experiment. While Watson's works has been criticized for oversimplifying human behavior, his contribution to the field of psychology are undeniable. He played a crucial role establishing behaviorism as a major force in psychology, and his ideas continue to influence the field today.